Hey guys, how are you doing? I hope everything is going well this week. So what I wanted to do is spend just a few minutes on chapter 2, and I want to talk about two concepts that are important, I think, to the chapter, but then also have some relevance to the way that we treat each other, and a key tool for both your everyday conversation, but also for the test. So I wanted to make sure I went over these two things. I want to talk about implicit personality theory, and I want to talk about perception checking, because I think that those are two things that are maybe not so well covered in the book. The one other thing I wanted to mention is that there are a ton of terms in this section that start with the word self. So try to be very, very cognizant of the definitions in the book. And if you have any questions about any of these terms, please feel free to email me and I'm happy to go over them. But I mean, I can't go over each and every one on these videos. It would be very, very long. So I'm going to focus on those two things, perception checking and implicit personality and attribution theory, just because I think that they're kind of glossed over in the text. So the first thing I want to talk about is perception checking, and that's because perception checking is a really amazingly useful tool. Excuse me. So what perception checking is it is a statement that we give to somebody when we're not entirely sure what they mean by a specific message. So if someone comes in and you say, "Oh, that's a nice dress," and they go, "Oh, yeah, whatever." You might immediately go, "Well, are they mad at me? Is something happening? What's going on?" And a lot of times we, and especially we in our own dominant culture, we tend to jump to conclusions. Why are you mad at me? You know? And so instead of doing that, we can use this thing called perception checking. It's super useful. It has three parts. And this is when I'm grading you on this on the test, because it's on the test. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, number one, a behavior description. And that behavior description should be pretty middle of the road. It should be, neutral. And then you give two possible interpretations of that behavior. And then last, you ask the person to clarify for you. So let's say I make dinner for somebody and I put it down in front of them and I say, "How is it?" And they go, "It's fine." Now that is probably immediately going to start self-talking in my own head. I'm going to go, "Well, what do they think by fine? What do they mean by fine? What's going on?" So instead of going, "What, you don't like it? You don't like when I cook for you? Do you not make this anymore?" Instead, trying a perception check, taking a step back and saying, when you just said "it's fine" when we had dinner, I didn't know if you were, if you didn't like what I made, if you did and you just didn't care for it, or if you had a busy day. What was going on there? And then hopefully that will spark a conversation in response. Here's another example. Let's say I've got a student and I look at them and I say, "Hey, do you have any questions?" And they go, "No, no, of course not. I'm fine." Well, the problem is that the verbal message, "I'm fine," is contrasting with the nonverbal. And we tend to get a little bit anxious when that happens. So a perception check would be, "Hey, when I asked you if you were doing okay, you said that you were fine, but it didn't look like you were fine. I didn't know if you were upset about other things or if you had a lot on your mind. Is there anything I can do to help you? What's going on?" All right, so that's how it works. The goal is to be as, neutral as possible in your behavior description, and then to let them come to you with the problem or the issue that's going on. So that's a perception check, and make sure that you've got those three parts when you write one on the test. And please do try this with the people around you, because it actually can be very useful to keep you from jumping to conclusions. Because remember, we all perceive the world in a different way. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk to you was implicit personality. This is this idea that we attribute, so it's also called attribution theory, certain personality traits to people based on what we think about them. And so when we like somebody and they do something nice, we assume that they did that nice thing because they're nice people, they're good people. And when they do something that makes us upset, it's because there's something going on. It's circumstance. So we tend to assume that nice people do nice things because they're nice. This seems very obvious, right? But don't worry, I'm going somewhere with it. And that people do bad things because there's something going on over here in their life somewhere. All right? And the flip side is also true. When we don't like someone and they do something that is mean, we assume it's because they're mean people. They're jerks. We don't care. And when they do something nice, we're suspicious. What do you want? You know? So, this is the implicit personality theory that we often attribute certain things. This is often called also the halo effect. You'll see that listed in a lot of textbooks. When we like someone, we assume that everything about them is good. And when we don't like somebody, we assume that everything about them is bad. And so there's something to be said for the fact that our perception of somebody influences what we think they are, who we think they are as a person. And I think that the takeaway from this is that we never know someone's story, and we should be really, really careful before we project personality onto somebody else. A few other little tidbits. Please make sure you know the difference between stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. Stereotype is assuming that everyone in a group is the same. Prejudice is a positive or negative judgment about that group, and discrimination is actual action. So make sure you know the difference, especially going into that first test. All right. So the other thing I want to pull your attention to in this section, there is a set of practice questions at the end of this to kind of help you practice with those different selves. And the last up, the other thing that I think could be a little ambiguous, let me see if I can find it here, is this idea of social comparison versus reflected appraisal. Social comparison is when you look at other people and you compare your sense of self, your self-concept to them. So you look at your behavior versus somebody else's behavior and you see, like, do I fit in, do I not fit in? Reflected appraisal is more about how other people react to you. So social comparison is a cognitive process that you engage in where you compare yourself to others. Whereas reflected appraisal is when other people react to you and how you see that. And there's a really cool quote I found that said, "We are both being shaped and are shaping the people around us all the time." So when you see somebody and you react to them, you are giving them information about themselves. And the reverse is true. Another thing to realize is that there are cultural aspects to self-concept in both how we fit the norm and what we are expected to do as far as what is valued, what is normal. So that's chapter 2 overview. There's lots more to look at, but I'm hoping that that will help you clarify some things that might be a little bit tricky. If there's a concept that you'd like to see explained in a video, please let me know. You can send me an email or post in the question answer forum. I will see you online and have a great week. Thanks.